came here to represent the citizens of my district with the pledge that I would keep an open mind, hear all sides, and carefully weigh all points of view when it came to deliberating on the truly tough issues that come before us. I believe it's my duty as a legislator to carefully consider and try to find common ground on issues that have tremendous impact on our citizens and our state. I am proud to serve with my colleagues, Senators Cates and Saviello, who also share this sentiment. And I find that it takes great leadership to enter into the arena of compromise. And compromise, unfortunately, has come to be a four-letter word. I am proud of our leadership that asks, is there a better way? It takes great courage to challenge your beliefs, to see if they stand up and can survive scrutiny. We should all take this journey once in a while, and by the testimony today, I think many of us have. Men and women of the Senate, I have been on this journey, and I've done my homework. I've met with citizens, doctors, patients, hospital presidents, CFOs, read countless reports and spreadsheets, and I've drilled very deep. And I have fingerprints on this bill that is before us. I put in a good faith effort to build a piece of legislation that supports Republican values. For months now, I've been listening to all sides of the debate. I had not committed a vote either way. I promised constituents on both sides that I would lock myself away in a quiet place, soul search, review what I've learned, and deliberate, and then make my decision. And I've done just that. But first, women and men of the Senate, I have somewhat of a confession to make. I should not be standing here today. By all measures, I've exceeded all expectations of where I would end up in life. For you see, my journey started long ago when I grew up in abject poverty. I lived in a single-parent household, the oldest of 3 boys. My mother was a nurse who worked the night shift in a nursing home, and when old enough, the nighttime child care duties fell to me. We were on food stamps, and we would often run out of heating oil during the cold Vermont winter nights. I quickly learned that you could take 2 sleeping bags, open them wide, zip them together, make one big one that could sleep the 3 of us. We had little in the way of material items, and a motley crew would be a kind description of how we looked. So, very young, I learned to work. I would go in early and stay late. I worked nights and weekends. I found that working in a kitchen also allowed me to have a meal, which helped out at home. I took culinary arts at my CTE school because I wanted to be like my dad and work in a kitchen. I spent 2 years studying culinary arts during the day and worked in restaurants at night. When I graduated from high school, I apprenticed for an Italian chef who had only graduated the 8th grade. Piero Bonamico taught me how to get through life. He said to me, find someone who does what you want to do, make sure they are the best at what you want to do, and do anything you can to work with them. Sweep the floors, wash the toilets, but find a way to get near them and learn from them, because nothing in life is free. Folks, these powerful principles are the foundation of my life. These principles I've followed and lived by to get where I am today, and they are the core of my being. The dignity of a day's work is what defines me and the fuel that fires my passion to succeed. I spent nearly 3 decades teaching our youth the virtues of hard work, the lessons that were taught to me on how to work your way out of poverty by perfecting a craft I passed on to the next generation. I did that as a living example. I connected with my students because I know what it's like to be poor. And I'm proud of each and every one of them who now support themselves and their families doing something they love. Some people call me lucky. I have a great wife, 2 beautiful children, had a long teaching career, own a successful business. I'm a state senator, not so lucky, and live in a fantastic community. I feel very blessed, and I'm thankful every single day. But I learned early on that the harder I worked, the luckier I got. Women and men of the Senate, I struggle to reconcile these beliefs with what is happening today when our state and federal government creates disincentives to working. On February 4th, the Congressional Budget Office released its budget and economic outlook for the next 10 years. It was one of the many documents that I read. And of particular interest is Appendix C, Labor Market Effects of the Affordable Care Act, updated estimates. And the CBO states in Appendix C that the ACA includes a range of provisions that will take full effect over the next several years that will influence the supply of and demand for labor through various channels. The CBO report goes on to say, the reduction in CBO's projections of hours worked represents a decline in the number of full-time equivalent workers of about 2 million by 2017, rising to 2.5 million in 2024. And the estimated reduction stems almost entirely from a net decline in the amount of labor that workers choose to supply, rather than in a net drop in businesses' demand for labor. I struggle to reconcile the actions of employers who will be forced to reduce the number of hours of their employees can work to 28 to fit inside a government-constructed box from which there is no way out. And I don't have to read this report to know that it's true. I've witnessed firsthand when people limit their lives and their potential in their pursuit of happiness to fit into a government-constructed box from which there is no way out. I've had employees quit because they were moving up the ladder, and the rewards that I gave for hard work and productivity caused a loss of benefits, and those benefits far outweighed my pay raise. Women and men of the Senate, many of us have spent the last 2 years serving on Maine's Workforce and Economic Futures Committee with a single-minded goal of creating more opportunity in Maine for our young people and our businesses. And I find it hard to reconcile our hard work with such strong disincentives to work. Can this possibly lead to a viable future for Maine? And what possible alternatives are there for us when the choices before us are not really choices? So in my deliberations, I looked to history for some examples of lessons that I might use to help me answer this question. Many experts claim that the Community Reinvestment Act of 1999 played a significant role in creating lax lending standards that fueled the housing bubble, which ultimately contributed to the Great Recession. And my purpose, folks, for mentioning is not to fuel a debate about the causes of the Great Recession, but rather to point out that our main community banks, our small street corner banks where everyone knows your name, were not responsible for the causes of the financial crisis. And this was determined by the authors of Dodd-Frank. Community banks simply did not contribute to the financial crisis. So I asked them, I asked my bankers at my community bank, why did they not take advantage of the Community Reinvestment Act? There was tremendous pressure from the government to relax lending practices, pressure stating that making home ownership affordable was critical to our communities. I asked how they could afford to leave millions of dollars of profit on the table, how they could afford to lose hundreds of customers to mortgage companies and the big banks. The response to my question is telling. Our community bankers live here. They know our communities, and they know that strong lending principles, unpopular as they may be, in the long run, ensure our economy is sustainable. The pressure to take the money was outweighed by strong proven principles. Those principles continue to serve us well today. If we could go back in time, would we choose a different path? We currently face a similar scenario where the pressure of reductions in the reimbursements for the elderly to be returned to us in the form of Medicaid payments is incredibly strong. We've heard it here today. But I think there is a better way. There has to be a better way. Even in closer recent memory is the school consolidation in Maine. Everyone clearly remembers the penalties that were imposed on school districts that did not conform to the Augusta mandate to consolidate. Communities that did not agree to consolidate were penalized by not receiving state subsidies. Communities felt coerced to agree against their wills because they would otherwise leave taxpayer money on the table that would then go to other communities. There was great divide in the communities where the vote was split, with angry citizens on both sides. Those communities that held their ground, chose principle over money, were instrumental in promoting changes to the law that now have repealed penalties, created mechanisms for withdrawal, and freed up school systems to reorganize. I believe a similar effort will change the current federal law for the better, and we need to be part of that effort. Men and women of the Senate, up to this point, I thought there might be a way to get the yes on Medicaid expansion. This was a long process for me. I worked with colleagues for whom I have nothing but the greatest respect and admiration. I challenged my core beliefs, but the scales were tipped when I read an article in the New York Times and then again in the Wall Street Journal regarding proposed cuts in Medicare Advantage payments for managed care plans serving more than 1/4 of all of our elderly beneficiaries. What angered me was that when savings were realized because managed care processes were working, those savings were categorized as overcharging massively for the care they provided to Medicare beneficiaries. And using this as precedent, I submit that the work we have done on this bill to develop policies that will improve outcomes and contain costs for managed care will end up with the same fate: continued reduction in payments for providers for services even under Maine care. I have no confidence that the great work in this legislation will be allowed to stand. Lastly, and for me, the final piece that convinced me to cast my vote in opposition was a letter I received from Hancock County Democratic Committee dated January 16, 2014, urging me to support this legislation and tying it to the effort, and I quote, to follow Vermont's lead and define a path to universal single-payer coverage for all Mainers for their health care. The communication clearly articulated that the ACA and Maine Care expansion are just the first steps toward a single-payer government-run health care system. That this expansion is but part of a large agenda to fundamentally change our health care system. So this agenda, a two-step route to single-payer government-run health care, I believe needs to be part of every discussion and debate around this issue. And it's a worthy debate, but to this date, it just hasn't been included. In conclusion, Mr. President, women and men of the Senate, I applaud my colleagues who sat down to work to solve this very important issue. I respect, value, and I cherish their leadership. I worked in good faith, but when I sat and weighed all the information I had gathered, while I wish that I could have come to a yes vote, I just could not. I've heard your stories, they weigh heavily on me, and I pledge to continue to work to find solutions to what are very real issues and problems facing Mainers every day. I do not, however, believe the answers to these problems lie in the bill in front of us. In the end, there was just way too much for me to reconcile with my upbringing, from growing up in poverty to the lessons learned from Mainers who put principles ahead of money, to government policies that create disincentives to working, to continued changes in the health care law that hurts our seniors and articulated push towards universal health care. It's important to learn the lessons from history to try not to make the same mistakes. Folks, it would have been a mistake to expand last session. It's a mistake to expand this session. Let's let the dust settle, wait until the goalposts stop moving, wait until there's true compromise at the federal level, not just a few choices in the government-constructed box. We will all fare better as a nation in a state if this can happen. I humbly and sincerely apologize for the length of this floor speech. You now know more about me than you ever cared to. I have laid awake many nights thinking about this issue in today's vote, and I wanted to make sure that the record reflects the amount and depth of effort I put into this vote. Thank you very much for listening.